Hey, what's up guys? So today we are going to be talking about your trap choices in Yu-Gi-Oh! As well as a little bit of insight on what's going on in the OCG, because TCG is actually following the same footsteps, although I know we have Heavy Storm banned and there's a little bit of ruling issues with Meister, and there's a couple reasons why certain cards are more expensive in the TCG than OCG, but we'll be covering all of that in this video. So first off, just to get this out of the way, Meister, if you guys are wondering why has this card gone up in price like crazy, the reason why is because in the TCG there's a ruling where you can use this card during damage step, which basically means that you can stop a lot of things that normally you wouldn't be able to stop. Now, if you play this card in the OCG, that means that you cannot use this during damage step. That is just the way it's ruled. But if you do want to actually qualify or compete in World Championships, you're going to have to actually go by the OCG ruling. That's just how the game is. Why we don't just already follow those rules, I don't know, because I know someone's going to ask that. I think we should all just have one rule for the same game, you know what I mean? But anyways, let's go ahead and talk about the first card that I want to talk about is Fiendish Chain. Now, this card has been, decreasing in the amount of players that are actually running it because there's a lot of reasons actually. But let's go ahead and jump right into it. So, first off, Exciton Knight. This card makes it so, it's going to blow up the field if your opponent has more cards. Kind of like how against Fire Fist, every time you play against Fire Fist, it's so easy to make this card against them because they got their Tenkies, they got their Tensus, they're always getting this little small advantage, and then you just blow up everything and then they're very sad. But that is just one small reason, because if you XYZ, this card is just going to sit on the field, or if something else happens, a lot of times this card just ends up staying on the field, and your opponent will just be like, well, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and make this because you have that Fiendish Chain. That's just that one extra card that is sitting there on the field. Another reason is because Fire and Ice Hand are very, very popular in the TCG. A lot of players are running 2 Fire, 2 Ice Hand, and that basically can eventually free the monster. Sometimes with Fiendish Chain, it doesn't get rid of the monster, and that's also kind of a problem, but, previously, when Inzectors and Windups were one of the hottest decks, this basically stopped your opponent from really doing anything, because the Inzectors, they would have to wait a turn, and basically that deck was all about you get one summon and then that's about it, unless they have Call of the Haunted. And sometimes it was actually better that the monster stayed on board, because then they couldn't Call of the Haunted, the monster and bring it back. But for the most part, a lot of players are playing Trap Tricks, Trap Hole, Nightmare, because not only does it get rid of the monster, but it doesn't stay there on the field, which it's sometimes not a bad thing for a certain deck. Certain decks that can really utilize this. I know there's the Mist Valley deck, but that's kind of irrelevant when we're trying to talk about the meta. I mean, there's some decks that play Zephyros. Zephyros is not a bad card to bounce back in Fiendish Chain. There are other cards like Delorean, which can bounce things back. So for certain decks, you don't have to take this card out, but I figured we'd mention it anyways. Next up, Upstart Goblin has actually been seeing a decrease in play for certain decks. Now, before, a lot of players were like, you know what, I got some extra room, 3 Upstart Goblins, there I go. But a lot of players want to actually play the Fire and Ice Hand. Basically, this is, I would say, most players aren't going to play 1 Fire Hand, 1 Ice Hand. It's usually 2 and 2. I think that is kind of average, and that is what is considered standard for most players. So before you would have extra room, that's kind of why you throw in the Upstart Goblins. But having Fire and Ice Hand are just so good. And also, there's also Soul Charge in the game. Sometimes making it so your opponent just has those extra, 2,000-3,000 life points. Being able to make the extra XYZ is really, really huge in the game. So that can make a difference. Sometimes that extra cowboy that they can make that can burn you for the rest of your life points. So that's just one reason why I has been seeing a decrease in play. But for certain decks, for example, like Boojins, which want to maintain a control aspect, or a Held Perfection deck, definitely still play Upstart Goblin, because if you can get that, board presence and that control that you want to have in the game, hey, Upstart Goblin, that few life points won't make too much difference if you can maintain, control and making it so your opponent can't do anything in the first place. Next up, Breakthrough Skill has seen a huge increase in play, and there's multiple reasons why. So first off, Fire and Ice Hand are things that, they get so much free advantage, and popping a Breakthrough Skill is not the end of the world. Whereas if they pop your D-Prison or something like your Black Hornets you're not going to get any advantage out of it. But if they pop like a Breakthrough Skill, hey, you can still definitely use it. And one reason why it's so popular even in the OCG right now is because Shaddols are tearing things up. Midrash basically says no XYZs or no synchros. It's very difficult to do anything against a Midrash unless you happen to have like a Spirit Reaper set, or you're going to be setting a Call of the Haunted to activating during the end phase of your opponent's turn. It's very difficult to do anything once Midrash hits the field for certain decks, and that can just be one way to deal with Midrash by just Breakthrough Skilling it. And plus, Breakthrough Skill is really good since it is technically chainable when your opponent goes, oh, I'm going to negate your effect with you know, Durandal or a Pleiades or something, you can chain breakthrough skill and then get rid of it. Also, it basically wrecks a lot of Quasar decks because once Quasar goes for his effect, you say no thank you, or you can just go ahead and breakthrough skill with Quasar. Obviously, Quasar has to negate, then you can, you know, go for Big Eyes, steal the Quasar, and then you'll basically secure victory from that. But Breakthrough Seal is a fantastic card, and the reason why it's really good not only in the OCG, because Shaddoll's are going to be a very strong deck, guys. This is the deck that I think a lot of players are going to be looking forward to playing because it's a really nasty deck to run to. It gets so much advantage, and they can play the passive game, they can play the aggressive game, and they have this little loop with once you get rid of their fusion monster, it's just going to come right back because they add the Shaddall fusion. So just keep that in mind, that Breakthrough Seal is a fantastic card. So if you have trouble against certain decks, this is just a fantastic card. If you're stuck against, you know, monsters that kind of stun you, I guess a Herald Perfection, that could be something. But, you know, there's a lot of decks where they try to maintain the stun aspect, like a Midrash is kind of a stun-oriented card, and that can stop that. Next up, Trap Tricks, Trap Hole, Nightmare. Now, this card did technically go down in price, but it's still, you know, seeing an increase in play since, you know, the last couple formats, is because basically the problem with Fiendish Chain is it doesn't get rid of the monster. And so many monsters in this game, very rarely will your opponent be like, you know what, I'm going to summon a monster and I'm going to activate its effect next turn. Like, when they get out that monster, they're going to use its effect, you know, that turn. So that's just one reason why people like this card. And it's not a bad card because you can actually search it out if you're playing them Trap Tricks, so pretty good in that aspect. And Trap Tricks are not a bad deck at all because that, ooh, I forgot its name. Let me look it up real quick so I can, it's the Diona? Yeah, I think that's her name. Yeah, this one is basically you normal summon it, then you get to go ahead and special summon a Trap Tricks, and then you get extra additional effects if the Trap Trick was special summoned, depending on the one that you're going for. But it's a pretty good card. Basically, what it does is it allows you to go into an XYZ and still get extra free advantage off of that. So that's really good, that aspect. Soul Charge, I didn't really want to talk about this card other than just because, you know, it's there as a reason why some players aren't playing Upstart Goblin in certain decks, because they're like, well, if I give my opponent, you know, more life points, that means more cards for Soul Charge. Next up, Dimensional Prison, and the reason why people are actually playing this, surprisingly, it's not to get rid of problematic cards that, you know, hit the board that are really, really strong in a sense where it's like their XYZ or synchro. Yeah, it hits Draco Sack, yeah, it hits other cards, and it gets rid of them so they don't have targets with Soul Charge, which is also another good reason. But it deals with the Fire and Ice hand so much better because usually your opponent, you know, they want to get that Fire or Ice hand out immediately, and they want to go through their deck as quick as possible because they don't want to draw the Fire and Ice hands. It's not productive to draw multiple Fire or Ice hands. You just want one. As long as you open up with one, you're good to go, and that's why I think a lot of players, instead of playing 3 copies of each, they drop it down to 2 because that can become a problem. But if you just open up with one, you can get so much advantage in the game. So that's one reason why a lot of players are playing Deep Prison. Plus, it kind of deals with things that you just don't want to hit the graveyard. Next up, Black Heart of Heaven. I already mentioned this, I don't know, a couple months ago. I was like, guys, main deck this card, get some of these cards, because I think this card is probably one of the best cards, and I think eventually this card will get hit because so many good cards in the game are oriented around XYZs and synchros or graveyard effects, which is why Debunk has been seeing so much play. Almost every side deck in the game right now, triple Debunk in the game right now. So this is also another fantastic card. It's kind of expensive now, so if you don't want to just wait for reprint, hey, that's an okay idea. I don't see it going over you know, $50 unless you know, someone decides to buy all of them and then no one has them. But yeah, for the most part, it is kind of an expensive card. I believe it's at like 20 bucks right now. But this card, it is, like I said, a really good card just because against certain decks, you just need it for the side deck. There's very few decks, I would say, that main deck triple. I mean, I've seen a few, you know, main decking 1, but for the most part, I think this is just a much better card. I know that Black Heart of Heaven, not so good against something like Boojins, but, you know, it's still a really great card nonetheless. And Fire and Ice hand, they're just here kind of mentioned. There's one reason, that's the main reason why Breakthrough Skill has been so much better, as far as in my personal opinion, as well as I think a lot of players' opinion, is just once Fire and Ice hand, they get too much free advantage when they start popping stuff. Breakthrough Skill is just there as, like, you know, you can still kind of use the card that you kind of already wrecked, but you know, it's not a bad card at all. Also, Wiretap is pretty self-explanatory for the reason why, but I'll briefly talk about it. The reason why people are playing Wiretap instead of something like 7 Tools is previously there was nothing to really stop any trap cards. The card that we really used before to negate stuff was actually Solemn Judgment, but that card is banned in the TCG. Why this card is banned, I really don't know. I feel like it's got a hefty cost, especially since we have Soul Charge out in the game. I think a lot of players, you know, for certain decks, you could definitely still run Solemn, but if you're running something like Mermail with triple Soul Charge, I don't know if you want to play Solemn Judgment, you know. There's just too much life points there. But for the most part, this card is just, it's fantastic. It basically doesn't have a downside. The downside is, oh, your opponent gets to shuffle that card back into the deck, and if they have to activate something, for example, like Solemn Warning, which they have to pay like 2,000 life points as a cost, hey, you know what, you send it back to your deck, maybe they can't even use it. Maybe they're going to be at 2,000 or under life points, and hey, that is now a dead card that they can potentially draw. So I really feel like this card doesn't have a downside. I mean, I don't know if you could argue it's even a, you know, an upside to it, making it so your opponent not only has a dead card, but your monster is already on board, you're already going to activate its effect, you're already going to do your shenanigans or do whatever you're going to do to get free advantage into the game, and then your opponent might draw the card later on, so that will actually hurt them. So I think Wiretap is just a fantastic card. 7 Tools has basically phased out of the game. No one really plays this card anymore because paying life points, sometimes it's kind of like an extra free monster sometimes, and that can make the difference between making an extra XYZ or extra synchro. But that's basically what I wanted to cover in the game, because I really feel like Breakthrough Skill, guys, this card is just, it's so good, and I can see it even increasing more in price for the ultimates. I know this card technically did get its reprint, but for a while this card was really expensive. It jumped up to like the 45s for the ultimates for one point before they got the reprint, but I still think this card is a really good card. So if you're looking to invest into something right now, I feel like Breakthrough Skill is a fantastic card, and I think it'll be very good in the future, guys, because Shadal's will be a really insane deck to actually deal with in the future, because basically if you're playing a Synchro or XYZ oriented deck, you might not be able to make anything, because Midrash is going to be like, nope, you can only special summon once per turn, because that's really going to hurt a lot of decks, and it's so easy to make a Midrash. But anyways, let me know what you guys' thoughts are down below. But yeah, this is just a little insight on the future. If you're looking to build your decks and you're like, you know what, I got some extra room, you know, I'm not really liking Upstart Goblin, hey, check out Breakthrough Skill, hey, check out Trap Tricks, Trap Hole Nightmare. There's a lot of different options for you, and if you're looking to stop stuff, I mean, Wiretap has basically been proving itself to be very, very viable, and if you're looking for extra cards, like you're already playing Upstart Goblin, you're like, you know what, I got enough traps, hey, I definitely recommend you to try 2 Fire hand and 2 Ice hands, and you'll be able to get some extra free advantage in the game. But anyways, if you guys have any other suggestions for cards, I would love to hear them, as well as talking about the future of cards, because Shadals are basically tearing it up in the OCG, and this is basically the highest tier deck, I would say. It's been topping the most in the OCG, and as we know, we kind of see this trend. Whatever is good in the OCG is usually going to be good in the TCG in the future, because they have the cards already available for them. But be on the lookout for Shadal's, because like I said, I've already mentioned like several times, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but it's a nasty deck to run to. If you haven't played against it, highly recommend you to try it out yourself, because it's already available on Dueling Network. And we just got this card, the El Shadal Crystal, which is a pretty good card too, which I'll make a video talking about the other things in Shadal's, because this card over here, the El Shadal Quick Play Fusion, and there's also that field spell where you can use your opponent's stuff. But anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day. Aszneyes signing out.